I went out on a public education display in my first year, and I found it really, really hard. Um, I'm used to kind of evangelism stalls, which can be hard too, but you often get smiling faces, a few jokes, and people were sometimes interested to stop and chat. And at least in this first stall that I had, it was just really, really hard because you've got these images and people are seeing them as they're coming past and they're having a reaction to them. But um, I didn't, at first, all I could think of was, well, so many people are having such a negative reaction, and this just feels really hard. But also, is this the best way to go about things? And I didn't actually go out again on a public education display until about 2 years later in my third year. And yeah, Beth Richards was keen to get me on that because we'd started a prayer group at Warwick that was praying every week for the unborn. And that was a really positive thing. But Beth was very helpful in saying, okay, let's not just pray, but let's also get out there. And so I thought, okay, I'll give it another try. And it was really hard again. But towards the end of that second stall, I think there was a real turning point for me in a guy coming up and chatting to me and one other person there and saying, a couple of years ago, I came past and I saw a display with my then girlfriend, now wife, and she was booked in to have an abortion the next day. She saw the images and she went crying all the way home. The thing was, I didn't want her to have an abortion, but there was nothing that I could do to dissuade her from it. But when she got home, in floods of tears, she cancelled the abortion. And he got out his phone and he said, here's a picture of our 2-year-old daughter. Keep doing what you're doing because she wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for you guys and the work you're doing. And for me, that was, as you can imagine, a massive turning point where I thought, wow, okay, yeah, I'm going to be going out again. And the other thing was, it got me thinking, I'm sure it probably was a different display that he saw a couple of years earlier, but it may have even been the same one that I was on. And it got me thinking, all I could see in that first display was people's reactions as they were walking past. And, this girlfriend, wife of his, she didn't stop to chat to any of us. So from our perspective, you think, well, how could any good come from this? We're just making people cry. And yet a life was saved through that. And so it made me realize, yeah, it is really hard. And I still don't find the displays easy at all. But in God's grace, over time, I've actually had far more conversations in recent displays than I ever used to when I started. And I think the brokenness that is uncovered by the displays, you have to recognize we're not creating that brokenness. I think we're uncovering what's already there. And I think a lot of people have this trauma that is internalized. And as long as it stays internalized, they can never be cured from it and they can never find true healing. And what the displays do is, in a very dramatic situation, they well up all of that trauma and it comes to the surface, and that's a really hard thing. But then it allows us to try and deal with that trauma, and in some cases for lives to be saved. And it allows us to point people to true healing, things like a post-abortion support for everyone and so on. And so that was quite helpful for me in thinking through, okay, just because a certain activity makes people upset, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing to do. It's a little bit more complicated than that.